オリエント急行殺人事件、続きプレイしていきます。ラウンジにみんな集まってるでしょうか？行ってみましょう。おー、勢揃い。
Monsieur Book, are the train crew locked in their quarters?
Yes, they are.
Then the stage is set for the final act. Ladies and gentlemen, I have gathered you together to hear my reconstruction of the murder of Samuel Edward Ratchet, also known as Cassetti. There is not one, but two possible solutions of the crime. I shall put them both before you, and I shall ask Monsieur Book and Dr. Constantine here to judge which solution is the correct one.
2 solutions?
Mr. Poirot, I am hardly qualified.
Nevertheless, your assistance is required. Now, you all know the facts of the case. Ratchet was found stabbed to death this morning. He was last known to be alive at 12:37 a.m. last night when he spoke to the wagon-lit conductor through the door. His watch was found to be badly dented, and it had stopped at 1:15. Dr. Constantine, who examined the body, puts the time of death as having occurred between midnight and 2 in the morning. At half an hour after midnight, as you all know, the train ran into a snowdrift. After that time, it was impossible for anyone to leave the train. So, here is my first theory. The enemy, as Ratchet expected, joined the train at Vinkovsky by the door left open by Captain Arbuthnot and Monsieur McQueen, who had just descended to the platform. He was equipped with a wagon-lit jacket, which he wore over his ordinary clothes, and a pass key which enabled him to gain access to Ratchet's compartment in spite of the doors being locked. Ratchet was under the influence of a sleeping draught. This man stabbed him with great ferocity, 12 wounds in all. He left the compartment through the communicating door to Madame Hubbard's compartment.
Yes, that's so. Scared me half out of my wits.
The murderer thrust the dagger he had used into Mrs. Hubbard's handbag in passing. Without knowing it, he lost a button of his uniform. Then he slipped out of the compartment and along the corridor. He put the uniform jacket into Detective Locke's suitcase to cast suspicion on her. And a few minutes later, dressed in his ordinary clothes, he left the train just before it started off again, using the same means for egress, the door near the dining car. That is the first hypothesis. But there's a second. For that, we must examine the motive for the crime. Why was Ratchet killed?
はい。長いポアロの第一のね、謎解きがありましたけども、第二の可能性としての殺人の動機は何か。復讐と金。はい、これは前回もね、似たような選択肢ありましたけども、これは復讐ですね。アームストロング事件に関わる人物たちの復讐。
The motive is clear. Revenge, of course. Nothing was stolen. And we know that Ratchet had made many enemies. This was a premeditated crime, meticulously planned.
はい、殺人の計画が立てられた時期は、イスタンブールからの出発直前、イスタンブールの出発の数ヶ月前。はい、これは前回のミズ・ロックのパートで、約半年前にラチェットの召使いであるエドワード・マスターマンがチケットを予約してましたよね。で、ヘクター・マックイーンも同乗するということで、もう3枚チケット予約取っていたので、 これはイスタンブール出発の数ヶ月前。
Since the kidnapping and death of little Daisy Armstrong, which traumatized many people close to the family. Even when the police concluded that it was Suzanne Moreau, questions remained. Detective Locke continued her investigation, as did others. They became convinced the truth lay elsewhere. We now know who the real murderer of Daisy is.
はい、デイジーを殺したのはスザンヌ・モローではなくラチェット。
It is clear now that Daisy's killer was Ratchet, also known as Cassetti and Michael Clark and how many other names. But of course, many of you have known this for a long time. It is obvious that the 12 stab wounds are not a random number. Dr. Constantine's analysis revealed that some stab wounds appeared to have been caused by a right-handed attacker. Others indicated the knife wielder was left-handed. Some wounds were deep, more than one fatal. Yet others were not much more than mere scratches. What can explain these discrepancies? This leads us to an obvious conclusion. They are symbolic.
12箇所の刺し傷が意味するのは、米国での陪審員の人数、デイジーの年齢。まずこれデイジーは3歳だったので、これは違いますよね。米国での陪審員の人数か。そういうことか。12人のイカれる男というね、作品ありましたけど、あれがそうだよね。陪審員の数だもんね。12。12人。そういう意味だったんだ。はい、米国での陪審員の人数。
12 stabs. 12! The same number as a trial jury in the United States. But not just a jury of 12 members condemning him to death, but 12 executioners as well. This self-appointed jury had meticulously planned for everything except
Snow.
snow. The avalanche that stopped us, as well as the presence of not one but 2 detectives on the train. They had to improvise, to hastily add clues and false leads.
なるほど。あれ即興だったのか。これ全部そうなんですね、じゃあ。はい。赤い着物。
This woman in a red kimono does not exist. I don't know which of the passengers it was. It does not really matter. It was just a performance, a charade to introduce another possible culprit to muddy the waters.
壊れた時計。
The time on Ratchet's broken watch was deliberately set to conceal the true time of the crime.
じゃあ、あの時はやっぱり意図的に操作されたものだったんだね。はい、電子タバコの液体。
The vial of vaping liquid incriminated Captain Arbuthnot. However, he had a solid alibi confirmed by Monsieur McQueen. Impossible then to suspect him.
うっかり落としちゃって、やべってなって、マックイーンが口裏合わせたってことかな。はい、車掌の上着。
The conductor's jacket, found in Detective Locke's suitcase, was put there only to cast suspicion upon her. All these false leads were intended for me. But I am Poirot. I understood the truth. We have a train full of suspects. It's time to identify who the real culprits are. Let's start with Detective Locke.
これ一人一人やっていくのかな。はい、ロック刑事はラチェットを刺したのか。はい、ロック刑事はですね、ずっと寝てました。ミシェルとヒルデガルデさんに睡眠薬を飲まされてずっと寝ていたので、ラチェットは刺していません。いいえ。ミズ・ロックが無実である証拠は、彼女は刑事である。 彼女は犯行を目撃されていない。彼女は薬を盛られた。あ、ここでちゃんとね、証拠を提示するのね。はい、彼女は薬を盛られた。
Planting the conductor's jacket in her suitcase was an attempt to implicate Detective Locke, but she couldn't fake her drugged condition. Dr. Constantine can testify that the drugged tea incapacitated her for hours, and she had 2 relapses. Let us move on to Monsieur McQueen. When I told him about Cassetti, he looked very surprised that I managed to make the connection between him and the Armstrong case. He told me, "But I thought we had..." I think he meant.
ミスター・マックイーンが言ったのはどういう意味か。手がかりは全部隠滅したと思ったのに。犯人はもう捕まったと思ったのに。私たちって言ってるから、これではないんじゃない？こっちじゃないですかね。
You thought you didn't leave any real clues linking the murder to the Armstrong kidnapping. Moreover, you insisted that Ratchet did not speak French when you knew I had heard a voice calling out in French that was supposed to be Ratchet.
おそらくこれ刺したのかで、はいにしたら、証拠は何かって出てくるから、ラチェット事件で自分の父親が関与してたっていうことは証拠にはならないから、おそらくラチェットの部屋から聞こえてきたフランス語をこの人が喋ってたっていうことが証拠になるんじゃないかな。はいにしてみよう。ああ、そういうことね。証拠になるのね、これ。証拠というか理由。まあ理由っていうか動機か。まあこれでしょうね、父親のため。
You took some pleasure in leaving me false clues, I think. It was quite annoying. But you told me yourself that your father was the district attorney who handled the Armstrong case.
The case haunted my father. At first, he believed Suzanne Moreau had helped her boyfriend, Noah, to kidnap Daisy, even though there were questions that went unanswered, and a young policewoman refused to let it go, continuing to find discrepancies, but never enough to reopen the official investigation.
That policewoman sits there. Her name is Joanna Locke.
Then tell him. Tell him how in the end my father believed you, how he resigned a job that he loved, racked with guilt that he may have let that monster go free. He died young, broken, his faith in justice broken. That's what Ratchet did to him.
Thank you for your honesty, Monsieur McQueen. Your father is one more victim of the man who called himself Ratchet.
ね、父も亡くなって
Now,
た
I
んだ。
will turn to Ratchet's valet, Monsieur Masterman.
この人謎なんだよね。この人、前回のミズ・ロックのパートでも特に出てこなかったし、ただチケットを取ったっていうだけだったよね。でももしこの人が殺害してたとしたらどういう動機だろう。動機がちょっとわからないので、これ家にしておきます。
No, Poirot. Remember Ratchet's sleeping pills.
はーん。そっか。あ、この人が、そっか。ラチェット氏に睡眠薬を飲ませたのか。序盤の方の供述ですっかり忘れてましたね、これ。そうですね。ラチェット氏に睡眠薬を飲ませたから。
Ratchet sensed danger close to him and naturally wanted to stay awake. You gave him sleeping pills without his knowledge. Once he was sound asleep, you could do what you had to do in peace.
Sir, I'll tell you the truth.
え
I was Colonel Armstrong's adjutant in the war, sir, and afterwards, I was his valet in New York. I'm afraid I concealed the fact this morning. It was very wrong of me, sir, but I knew how suspicious it would look.
Is that all you have to say?
That's all, sir.
これは初耳でしたね。
To leave no suspicious stone unturned, let us move on to Monsieur Book.
What? Me? A suspicious stone?
まあでもブークが 犯人だとしたら、コンスタンティン氏も怪しくなるよね。まあ、ブークは違うでしょう。あ、笑顔。はい。ブークが無実である証拠は、そうですね。これだね。列車の客室を見つけてくれたから。そうだよね。だってさ、ブークが犯人だったら絶対ポアロ乗せないでしょ。自ら捕まりに行くようなもんだから。はい、列車の客室を見つけてくれたから。
Book, my friend, of course you are not guilty. You did everything you could to get me on this train. What madness would cause you to ensure, and I speak with all modesty, that the best detective in the world could be present to witness your crime?
But doesn't our friendship count as well?
Most assuredly, but a murderer can wear all sorts of masks, including friendship. Let us consider our ever-efficient wagon-lit conductor, Pierre Michel.
ミシェル、そうですね。ミシェルは逆に刺してない方がちょっと不自然だよね。娘をあんな状況にさせた人物が目の前にいて、刺さないはずがない。はい、ミスター・ミシェルの容疑の理由は、ミズ・ロックに薬を持ったから、スタッフのメンバーだったから、ミズ・モローの父親だから。まあ、薬を持ったからっていうのも理由にはなるけど、でも、それよりもこれだよね。ミズ・モローの父親だから。
No, that is his motive. I need real, tangible proof.
そういうことですか。動機じゃダメなんだ、ここは。じゃあ、ミズ・ロックに薬を持ったから。
Your admission that you drugged Detective Locke immediately incriminates you. But the murder could not have been possible without your very capable assistance. Your knowledge of train procedures made the murder possible, and your position in the corridor of the train allowed you to be the perfect alibi for several passengers. And your motive? Suzanne Moreau, Daisy Armstrong's poor nanny, who was wrongly accused and committed suicide, was your daughter.
C'est enfoiré. He got what he deserved. My poor daughter has finally been avenged. My Suzanne. My child.
Let's move on now to Monsieur Hardman, one of 3 detectives on this train.
はい、ハードマンも指してますね。容疑の理由は、ミスター・ミシェルが証言したから、セールスマンのふりをしたから。彼は刑事だから？彼は刑事じゃないよね。はい、これミスター・ミシェルが証言したから。
Monsieur Hardman, I think you are a real detective, but you were never hired by Ratchet. Your alibi was that you were watching the corridor to protect Ratchet, which, of course, you never did. You protected Pierre Michel. However, we just saw that his alibi doesn't hold up, so neither does yours.
I don't know about the conductor.
Being Suzanne's fiancé, you had a substantial motive to punish Ratchet. You used your detective skills, just as Detective Locke did, to hunt him down and finally avenge the death of your beloved.
That's right, Mr. Poirot. I do have some detective skills.
I never doubted it. Now, Fraulein Schmidt, the lady's maid with the soul of a cook.
はい、ミズ・シュミットはラチェットを刺したのか。刺してるでしょう。容疑の理由は、ドラゴミロフ公爵夫人のハンカチについて嘘をついたから。ドラゴミロフ公爵夫人の助手だから。ミズ・ロックに薬を持ったから。ミシェルとこれは同じ理由ですね。ミズ・ロックに薬を持ったから。
Fraulein Schmidt, you told me of your remorse for drugging Detective Locke. I believe you are sincere. However, as the cook of the Armstrong family, you experienced the drama from within. The death of Daisy, then Sonia Armstrong, who died in childbirth, and finally, Suzanne and John Armstrong.
So much misfortune in that poor family. The death of this criminal is only justice.
Let us move on to Countess Andreni. I was impressed by the earnestness of her husband when he swore to me solemnly on his honor that his wife never left her compartment that night. Should I believe it?
でもこのアンドレニー伯爵夫人が指してたとすれば、この旦那さんも指してるよね、きっとね、夫婦で。でもこの愛してる妻を殺人に加担させようとするかな。なんならこの旦那さんが代わりに刺したまであるよね。いやーでもね、やっぱりここは刺してるでしょう。多分これ夫婦一緒に刺してると思う。はい。
Even if it seems logical, it's more complicated than that. I believe Countess Andreni.
あー、刺してないんだ。無実である証拠は、彼女はソニア・アームストロングの妹だから。道徳上人を刺すことはできないから。人を刺すだけの力はないから。この彼女はソニア・アームストロングの妹だからっていうのは、むしろ殺害の動機になるから、これは違うってことか。人を刺すだけの力はないからっていうのはないんじゃない多分。それぐらいの力はあるでしょう。わかんないな。これかな？道徳上人を刺すことはできないから。
Countess Andreni, being Sonia Armstrong's sister, you had every reason in the world to want to avenge her. But you were incapable of stabbing someone, even after what he had done to you and your family. The night of the crime, you simply took a sleeping pill. I appreciate the irony that nearby, Detective Locke was also in a drugged sleep. When you awoke, you thought the nightmare was over.
Rudolph?
Hush, my love. Hush.
Excellent transition. I was coming to you, Count Andreni.
じゃあやっぱりこの旦那さんが代わりに刺したのかな？なぜアンドレニ伯爵はラチェットを刺したのか。ラチェットの顔が気に入らなかったから。アンドレニ伯爵夫人の身代わりになるため。スポーツ選手だから。外交官なのでスポーツ選手ではないよね。だからこれじゃないかな。この妻の無念を晴らしてあげようと思って、身代わりになったんじゃないかな。
12 people, a jury. This was very important to all of you. If Countess Andreni did not stab Ratchet, someone had to take her place. And you, Count, the beloved husband. I've seen how fiercely you love and protect your wife.
Enough! I would do anything for Helena. Anything. Even that.
Yes, even that. Let's move on to Monsieur Foscarelli.
はい、ミスター・フォスカレリはラチェットを刺したのか。フォスカレリさんも刺してるでしょう。容疑の理由は、ミズ・ロックの捜査のため、イタリア人だから、スポーツ選手だから、あれ、この選択肢にスザンヌの恋人だったからっていうのがないんだね。イタリア人だからは絶対ないから、スポーツ選手。ドライバーってスポーツ選手なのかな？ F1 ドライバーとかはスポーツ選手になるか。でもどっちにしてもスポーツ選手だからっていうのは容疑の理由にはならないから、ミズ・ロックの捜査のためかな。
Detective Locke found out that you were the Armstrong chauffeur and that you planned to travel on the same train at the same time as Ratchet. That is what made her decide to obtain a ticket as well. Unfortunately, she could not prevent the murder. Have you lost your tongue, Mr. Foscarelli?
Oh, Daisy. She was the delight of the house. Tonio, she called me. And she would sit in the car and pretend to drive me.
And you, Mademoiselle Olson, a champion for the immigrants, a worthy calling.
あれ、ポスカレリ氏、スザンヌのこと言ってなかったね。なんかないものになってない？二人が付き合ってたこと。あれは一体何だったんだ？まあ、この人さ、謎だったんですけど、もしかしたら戦争で、ジョン・アームストロング大佐をなんかこう、治療してたとか、かもしれないね。看護師だから。というか、アームストロング邸のかかりつけの看護師とかだったんじゃない？もしかして。はいにしとこうか。ミズ・オルソンの容疑の理由は、ミズ・デブナムがアリバイを証言したため、彼女は控えめな性格なので、ハバード夫人の掛け金の件。そうですね、これかな？ハバード夫人がなんか矛盾したこと言ってたのに、この人も賛同してたもんね、夫人に。これでしょう。
Mademoiselle Olson, you supported Madame Hubbard's story about her connecting door latch, a story that I later demonstrated to be impossible. So, you deliberately lied to me, and you also lied about Mademoiselle Debenham's whereabouts.
Enough! I can't take this anymore! I know what you want from me, Mr. Poirot. Very well. Here it is. She was my little Daisy, my angel, so patient. When I patched a scrape or took her temperature, that was my job. But she was so much more to me. She was a shining light in an ever-darkening world. I've tried to honor her by caring for children who have lost everything.
Thank you, Mademoiselle Olson. You too shed light on your part in this mystery.
はい、ミズ・オルソンの職業は、デイジーの子守はスザンヌ・モローなので、デイジーの看護師ですね。
You were Daisy Armstrong's nurse. I will ask you no more questions. It is enough that you have admitted what I know to be the truth, and I understand. Let's move on. Dr. Constantine.
You suspect me? I know none of these people. I didn't know Ratchet either, and I've taken a solemn oath to help people, not murder them.
なんか逆に怪しいな。そんなに否定されたら。でもまあ、ブークとこう一緒に夜通し喋ってたっていうのがしっかりしたアリバイになると思うので、いいえでしょうかね。そうね。ブークの証言があるから、医者だから、捜査を手伝ったから。はい、これはブークの証言があるから。
You are one of the few people in this room not to have any connection with the Armstrong case. Moreover, your alibi is confirmed by Monsieur Book, whom I would trust with my life.
That is very kindly said, my friend.
We now come to Mademoiselle Debenham and Captain Arbuthnot, whose relationship was not in doubt from the moment I inspected your room at the hotel.
You have a bloody nerve.
Indeed, I do.
We're getting married.
Congratulations. But I would rather talk about your relationship to John Armstrong.
アーバスノット隊とジョン・アームストロングを結びつけるものは何か。これ何？一個しか選べないのか。そっか。なんかこっちとこっちが繋がるのかなと思ったけど。一個だったらこれですね。軍人。
That was easy. Captain Arbuthnot, you served in the army with John Armstrong. What I don't understand is why a man your age is still a captain. One might expect you to be a colonel as well.
Ever fought in a war, Poirot?
It was war that first brought me to England.
Then you know what it's like. There's a shattering sound, and death, and mistakes, acting on intelligence that proved to be wrong. I sent a patrol to their death. Good men, brave men. Wasted. John testified on my behalf at a court-martial. I'm not a colonel. I don't deserve to be, you bloody fool. But I'm also not in prison. John remained my best friend until... There, you have my story. Understand now?
Archie, calm down, please.
You're right, Mary. What you see in me, I don't understand.
Oh, Archie, I see in you what John saw.
Miss Debenham, I'm sorry.
My turn, is it?
I'm afraid so. And you have caused me quite a puzzlement. Your connection with the Armstrong family was not obvious. Then I remembered the job you currently hold.
ミズ・デブナムとアームストロング家との関係。この人は、通訳とかやってるから、考えられるのはこれだけだよね。家庭教師。
Et voilà. You were the teacher of...
デイジーは3歳だけど、英才教育とかする家って3歳ぐらいから家庭教師つけてるのかな？でも、ヘレナ・アンドレニー。年齢的にこっちもあり得るよね。ヘレナがまだ20代、21とかだから、10年ぐらい前に家庭教師をやってたとしてもおかしくはない。ただ、今回このゲーム始まって、この人とこのヘレナのつながりっていうのが全く出てきてないから、それを言ったらデイジーとのつながりも出てきてないんだけどね。ただそのヘレナが何年か前まで学生だったっていうところがちょっとした伏線だったんじゃないのかな。その時の家庭教師かもしれない。これで言ってみましょうか。
You were the teacher of Helena Andreni.whose maiden name was Helena Goldenberg before she married Count Andreni.
Yes, absolutely. Why lie to you? She was an excellent student.
Captain Arbuthnot.
アーバスノットは指してるでしょうね。アーバスノットのアリバイを証言してたヘクター・マックイーンを指してるから、はい。これですね。ミスター・マックイーンの証言があったから。
You had one of the strongest alibis thanks to Mr. McQueen, but his testimony melted like a snowflake. There went your alibi. Poof! Unless you have another one. As for you, Mademoiselle Debenham.
ミス・デブナムさんは、廊下を歩いてるヒーローの人物がいたって言ってるんだよね。で、そのデブナムさんが起きたことに対して、同じ部屋だったグレタ・オルソンさんがかばってたから、この人も刺した側じゃないのかな？はい、容疑の理由。イスタンブール駅での発言。ミズ・オルソンが証言したから。アーバスノット。これでしょうかね。ミズ・オルソンが証言したから。
Mademoiselle Olsen was the only one who could confirm your alibi. I think you know where you stand.
Very good, Mr. Poirot. Are you satisfied?
I will be soon. Now I must turn to Sonia Armstrong's godmother, Princess Dragomirov.
はい。ラチェットの体にあった12箇所の刺し傷。一つだけが左利きの人物による傷でした。で、この列車に乗っている乗客で、唯一の左利きの人物がこのドラゴミロフ公爵夫人。それは立派な証拠になるんじゃないでしょうか。はい。はい、容疑の理由は左利きだから。
Princess Dragomirov, you weren't on my list of suspects at the start.Given your social position.
I left my social position in a cold country.
Do you object to being addressed as princess?
I deny people the opportunity. It makes a good story to tell their friends. It also guarantees a good table in the best restaurants.
Princess, there is also, forgive me, Your extreme physical fragility.
It does not stop me when I must be strong.
Indeed. Of more importance, though, is the fact that you're the only left-handed person on the train. And the single blow to Ratchet from a left-handed person was very, forgive me, weak. Finally, I'm afraid I know the alibi that you shared with Fraulein Schmidt is false.
You have been very thorough, sir. I hope you will permit me to say we are much alike.
I am honored. Now it is time to end with Mrs. Hubbard, or should I say...
この人さ、そうなんですよね。ソニアとヘレナの母親のリンダ・アーデンね。この人が一回も出てきてないなって思ったの。で、この人は絶対に怪しかったじゃないですか、今まで。掛け金の件とかね、部屋にナイフがあったとかね。この人は一体どういうつながりなのかなっていうふうにちょっと考えてて、まさにリンダ・アーデンっていうのがやっぱりしっくりくるよね。一般的な主婦じゃないもんね、もう風貌が。多分もう女優としては引退してるんだろうけど、やっぱり女優っぽいオーラがなんか残ってるもん。ではリンダ・アーデン。
Linda Arden.
驚いてる。
If Princess Dragomirov hadn't told me about her relationship with this famous actress, I might not have made the connection. But you are a great actress, madame. Your performance as a flighty, self-involved woman was superb. I never would have guessed something entirely different. As for what ties you to the Armstrong family, it is obvious.
はい、ハバード夫人とアームストロング家との関係は何だろうか。これも一つだけですよね。リンダ・ハーデンはソニアの母親でした。
I'm right again. That happens to me a lot. Mrs. Hubbard, you are the mother of Sonia Armstrong and Mrs. Andreni.
ハバード夫人は指してるでしょう。はい。容疑の理由はリンダ・アーデン、ラチェットの近親者。掛け金を隠した洗面用具入れ。これは動機になっちゃうのかな、リンダ・アーデンは。これですかね、掛け金を隠した洗面用具入れ。まあ、実際に再現もしたしね。はい。
Madame Hubbard, you really are a remarkable actress. You put so much effort into your character and into staging the murder. I saw it as a perfect mosaic, each person playing his or her allotted part. So carefully arranged that if suspicion should fall on any one person, the evidence of one or more of the others would clear the accused person and confuse the issue. Everything was meticulously planned. But you hadn't expected that Detective Locke and I would be on this train, and the avalanche would block it on the night of the murder. You had to improvise. But again, improvisation would be another of your skills as an actress. So you came up with the story that the latch on the door that communicated with Ratchet's compartment was hidden by the handbag.
I always fancied myself in comedy parts. That slip about the sponge bag was silly. Shows you should always rehearse properly. You know all about it, Mr. Poirot. You're a very wonderful man, but even you can't quite imagine what it was like. That awful day. I was just crazy with grief. So were the servants. We decided then and there that the sentence of death that Ratchet had escaped had got to be carried out. There were 12 of us, or rather 11. Suzanne's father was over in France, of course. First we thought we'd draw lots as to who should do it, but in the end we decided on this way. It was the driver, Antonio, who suggested it. Mary worked out all the details later with Hector McQueen. It took a long time to perfect our plan. We first had to track Ratchet down. Hardman managed that in the end. Then we had to try and get Edward and Hector into his employment. Well, we managed that. Then we had a consultation with Suzanne's father. Captain Arbuthnot was very keen on having 12 of us. He seemed to think it made it more orderly. He didn't like the stabbing idea much. But he agreed that it did solve most of our difficulties. Well, Suzanne's father was willing. Suzanne had been his only child. We knew from Hector that Ratchet would be coming back from the east, sooner or later, by the Orient Express. With Pierre Michel actually working on that train, the chance was too good to be missed. My daughter's husband had to know, of course, and he insisted on coming on the train with her. Hector wrangled it so that Ratchet selected the right day for traveling when Michel would be on duty. And then, at the last minute, you came. For the rest of the story, you worked out everything, Mr. Poirot. You were right about all of us. What are you going to do about it? If it must all come out, can't you lay the blame upon me, and me only? I would have stabbed that man 12 times willingly. It wasn't only that he was responsible for my daughter's death, and her child's, and that of the other child who might have been alive and happy now. It was more than that. There had been other children kidnapped before Daisy, and there might be others in the future. Society had condemned him. We were only carrying out the sentence, but it's unnecessary to bring all these others into it, all these good, faithful souls.
You are a director of the company, Monsieur Bouc. What do you say?
In my opinion, Poirot, the first theory you put forward was the correct one. Decidedly so. I suggest that is the solution we offer to the police. You agree, Doctor?
Certainly, I agree. As regards the medical evidence, I think that I made one or two fantastic suggestions.
Then, having placed my solution before you, I have the honor to retire from the case.
Ah, 一件落着しました。終わりました。オリエント急行殺人事件。アガサ・クリスティ。面白かった。
I'm sorry to wake you up in the middle of the night, Poirot, but it couldn't wait. There was a detail that bothered me in my preliminary autopsy of Ratchet's body. I went back to examine the body and I discovered a wound covered by another. The blow I hadn't seen was delivered by a thinner, sharper blade. So there were not 12, but 13 stab wounds.
12 stabs for 12 jurors. It doesn't work with 13 wounds. The symmetry is destroyed.
It can't be one of the culprits who stabbed him twice?
Doctor, a different knife was used. There is only one explanation. Somehow, some way, there is a 13th murderer on this train. We must tell Bouc. The case is not solved.
チャプター8を完了する。2023年12月18日午前9時。列車動きましたね。
Please come in. Bouc. I see we are moving at last.
Yes. The way was finally cleared while we slept. If all goes well, we will arrive in Venice this evening. The train will be there for several hours for refueling and reprovisioning. What do we do with the 13th murderer? Do you have a lead?
I thought about it. There is one clue that was left aside in my investigation. The diary I found in Ratchet's safe mentioned an appointment in Venice. Someone with the initials AW. He will never keep the appointment. but there should be enough time. I must try to keep that appointment for him.
終わってなかった。終わってませんでした。まだ。あのままエンドロール行くかと思いきや、終わってなかったね。これはおそらくゲームオリジナルかな？原作だとさ、多分あれで終わりになるんですよね。いつどこでラチェットと面会したか。AW さんといつ面会するってこと？これはあれですよね。手帳の中見れないもんね。会う場所。これはなんだろう？これ美容師。フォンタナデイコまでしか出てないんだけど、これ。フォンタナデイコニーリ。オリエント急行ではないよね。これかな？で、都市が今言ってたベネチア。時間ね。時間さ、午前11時だったような気がするな。日にちが18日ですかね。はい。確認。違う。ちょっとメモ取ってるので見てもいいですかね。はい、メモを確認したら午後10時でした。はい、確認。
My little gray cells did not let me down.
新たな謎、オリエント急行の旅路。ヘイスティングス役を探す。まさかね、13人の殺人者が出てくるとは。これはかなり予想外ですね。はい、では今回はこの辺にしたいと思います。いや、これで本当に実況、最後の動画かなと思って撮ってたんですけど、まだ続きますね。でもまだこのゲームを楽しめるのが嬉しい。それでは、ご視聴ありがとうございました。じゃあねー。